Hello, Mr. Wong.
Yes.
I believe the only one missing from this group is Miss Nuruddin.
Yes.
But we start in 30 seconds.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the June 17th, 2021 meeting of the Fulton County Board of Registrations and Elections. I'm Alex Wana. I'm the chair of the board. I'm joined by my colleagues, Mr. Mark Wingate, Dr. Kathleen Ruth, as well as Mr. Aaron Johnson. I believe our vice chair, Madam Vice Chair Renetta Nuruddin, will be joining us shortly. With that, we constitute a quorum. This meeting is now officially called to order at 10 a.m. Also want to acknowledge that we are joined by our director, Mr. Rick Barron, as well as our board secretary, Mariska Bodison. With that, first item on the, I just want to also acknowledge that while the governor's restrictions on COVID and safety protocols about meeting in person have been lifted, we did vote at our last minute meeting to hold this meeting virtually, but beginning in July, our meetings will reconvene in person. So just know that that change is coming in July. All right, the first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Colleagues, you got a copy of that. I do have one change, one ask for an amendment, and that is that it occurred to us yesterday that our March 30th special call meeting, while we approved the minutes, we did not approve the executive session minutes from that time. So I will go ahead and put forward a motion to amend our agenda to add the executive session meeting on March 30th, 2021, executive session onto our agenda for approval at that moment.
So moved.
All right, there's a motion from Mr. Wingate, seconded by Mr. Johnson. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any objections? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. With that, I need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Wingate, seconded by Mr. Johnson. If there's no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion carries. We are now into our amended agenda. The next item, number 2, is communications and public response. Ms. Bodison, if you will direct us through the list of folks who have signed up to speak, please.
Good morning. The first speaker is Bridget Thorne.
And before Ms. Thorne speaks, I want to acknowledge that we have been joined by Madam Vice Chair Renetta Nuruddin. Thank you. Ms. Thorne, please proceed.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Bridget Thorne. I just wanted to thank Renetta for her years of public service. Renetta, I haven't known you that long, but you've had a major impact on my life. Last December, I emailed the entire board my grave concerns after what I witnessed in the warehouse before the election. I gave public comment wondering if any of you were listening to us. I saw people printing ballots, mishandling of 40,000 early voting ballots from State Farm Arena, and missing 400 absentee ballots from my precinct. Renetta was concerned and the only one who replied that she was listening to me and that I should contact the Secretary of State. She didn't know if I was a Democrat, Republican, or whatever party. She saw me as a concerned Fulton citizen. Do you know how that made me feel? That I was actually being heard? I've written many emails since. I know you've all gotten them. And I can count on Renetta to give me an honest and fair opinion. She's good at correcting me, questioning. She's been great at educating me through the election process. She is truly a public servant for all of us. Election integrity should be a nonpartisan issue. Just like voter suppression, election integrity should be a concern for all. I hope that all of you on this board can put your parties aside and do what is best for all the citizens of Fulton County. We are truly blessed to live in this amazing place. Bernetta, thank you for your service. I look forward to seeing what great things are ahead. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Thorne, and we'll all have an opportunity later in the agenda to share our appreciation for Madam Vice Chair, but thank you for your comments, Ms. Thorne. All right, Ms. Bodison, next up, please.
Chairman Warren, that's all I have.
Okay, if there are no other public comments from the public, we'll continue on to the next item on our agenda under old business, item number 3, approval of minutes. We have 4, actually now 5 with the amendment, 5 sets of minutes to approve, 3 executive sessions, 1 from March 30th, April 15th, and May 13th. Our special meeting and work session that was held on May 4th, and then our regular meeting on May 13th. Colleagues, you should have had this in your packet yesterday as well as what I sent out. Any comments, questions, edits? If not, is there a motion to approve the entire set if possible, or if we need to separate any of them out, we certainly can. Is there a motion from the board?
So moved.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we group all of these non-approved minutes for approval.
Okay, thank you, sir. I think Dr. Ruth, is that a second on that one?
Yes, second.
All right, so there is a motion from Mr. Wingate, seconded by Dr. Ruth, to approve these as a group. There's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Are there any opposed? All right, any opposed? If there's no opposed, the motion is approved or adopted by unanimously. So thank you. Next item up, 4 monthly operations report for May 2021. Mr. Barron, you have the floor.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to just start with the Elections Division report. The budget has been revised for the November election to include Atlanta Public Schools and Fulton County Schools, the East Floss for both of those. One thing that could complicate matters is that we have taken a Happy Faces agenda item to the BOC 3 times. It has failed on a 3-2 vote. We've had members that haven't been in attendance when the vote's been taken. And so we are at a point now in July, we have to take it back in July after it was held yesterday. And if we are unable to, if they don't pass it, we're going to have to tell the municipalities and school districts we are going to be probably unable to conduct their elections without supplemental staff for the fall. And one of the results of it being held yesterday after failing twice is that we $350,000 were to be paid to Happy Faces from the grant funds. And now we are going to have to go back to the county and ask for more money in our budget to pay for them out of the general fund. So we lost that money. In addition, yesterday, there was an item, one member left sick and one commissioner left sick and a couple others weren't at their desks. One item failed on a 3-1 vote for $400,000 of grant funds to get us more poll pads for additional polling places we are putting in place and to also have more for training. And so we are going to have to take that back to the board on soundings to see if they will pay for it give us some money to pay for it out of the general fund. Other than that, we also had several items approved by the BOC yesterday to purchase, including the inventory system, which I'll talk about in a bit. Polling locations, you should have received from Mariska via Nadine, or from Nadine through Mariska, the polling places that we are going to bring to you for the July meeting to approve for additional election day polling places to get us up to 271 locations. You should have also received advanced voting locations in your packet to approve next month, and with the map and proposed hours. And so you can look those over and consider all of those over the next month until the next meeting. The absentee ballot drop boxes, we're compiling information from the SOS to ensure the advanced voting manager training will include SB 202 absentee ballot drop box procedures. And we've worked with GIS to confirm the 8 boxes selected are evenly distributed. That item is later in the agenda, so we'll have a discussion on that. So the board will vote on those locations today. We've tested something on the poll pads to make it easy for poll workers to sign in and out when they work on election day. That should cut down, it should expedite poll worker payroll. And we are purchasing that module for the poll pads for the fall. We, with regard to the inventory system that was approved yesterday, we are going to get that implemented, and that will enable us on the post-election assessment plan. As you can see in the post-election assessment plan, that we have everything is either in process or completed until you get to the 2 items that have to deal with inventory. And that's because we were finally able to get the inventory system approved. It took quite a bit of time to piggyback onto an intergovernmental agreement with a county in Florida. And so that was the major delay, was getting that squared away between Broward County and Fulton County to purchase the WDS system. And if you have any detailed questions about the inventory system, Nadine can answer those. With regard to registration, we have only processed 39,198 applications this year, 6,336 this month. And you can see based on the history in the table that we have not been this low in voter registration applications since 2015 and 2013. It's about a quarter of what it was in 2019. We have 820,000 active voters, 36,901 inactive. Ralph I don't know if Ralph has a specific date from Secretary of State yet, but they have indicated that national change of address will be run this summer, which should, and our numbers of voter registrants should drop. I think usually it's around 10,000 when they run NCOA. And that will, Ralph can answer that if he's received a firm date from the state. We mailed 90 letters to suspected felons. We have 2 vacancies in voter registration, one because of a promotion and another from a resignation. The municipalities have the voter files, and they have until July 2nd to get those back to us to see if there are any changes. They have their GIS departments going through those to make sure that all of the streets are correct and the voters are in the right place. And that's something we do before in every municipal year, is we get those to them. And the items that in the Achieve It plan for post assessment on with regard to voter registration, one has been completed. The other item, Ralph is waiting for information on that, and he can give you details as to when that should be completed. With regard to the administrative division, we are going to propose 9 new positions on the July 16th agenda. The PDQs went through personnel. They were signed off by finance last week, and that process from the time we sent the PDQs up took at least 2 months for that. So, but in July 16th, we should be requesting 9 new positions, and we are making plans to request 11 new salary positions in 2022 as well. And we've identified those already. And most of those, I think all of them, we already have positions for them, so we won't have to submit PDQs. So that process, and we may do it in a mid-year, at a mid-year point when the county issues a report later of where they will have savings, and it may be at that point that we request the 11 new positions for next year. With regard to the audit that the Fulton County Audit Department is conducting, the first draft, and I talked to Director Nix, and he said that the first draft of that report, he has to have that completed by June 30th. And I'm not sure when the final draft has to be, when the final draft will be issued, but with regard to this, the initial draft, he will have one completed on the 30th. And then later this meeting with regard to voter education and outreach, Patrick is going to go over the initial plan that he has drafted. And I know that he called each one of the board members and spoke to each of you to see if you had any input on those. And he will speak to that later in the meeting. And then if you, I think in your packets also, Mariska gave you information on all of the open records requests. And she would be happy to answer any questions on those matters. I can take any questions now.
All right. Questions from my colleagues, Dr. Ruth and then Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Rick, can you talk about what is the contingency plan with Happy Faces? So it's gone to the BOC, I believe twice, and has failed. What's next?
Well, with regard to, we are going to, the county's going to have to make a decision on how to pay those invoices that are that are owed. And we are, and we probably are just going to have to go do a soundings request to pay, since we aren't going to be able to pay those out of the grant funds. And so I have to talk to Sharon Whitmore, Chief Financial Officer, and also with Dick Anderson, just to see what we're going to do between now and the July 16th board meeting, Board of Commissioners meeting. Happy Faces right now has already fronted all of those payments. And so the county just owes them a hefty sum of money. And it could be that if they don't approve the not to exceed spending authority, then we would have to find another, we would have to do a soundings request to pay the back invoices. And then we will also then have to find another staffing agency. The issue with those that are on the state contract is that whenever the purchasing director has gone to some of the others, none of them have the bandwidth that Happy Faces has to be able to fill those positions. And a couple of them that we used last year, they had many more no-shows than Happy Faces did, and Happy Faces would backfill those positions that the other agencies were unable to fill. And so that's been part of the frustration with this, is that they have been the most efficient at placing people quickly, backfilling, working with us, and recruiting people. And so, and when Felicia has gone out to the other vendors on the statewide contract, the others that are on that are unable to meet our needs. So it could be that we end up having to work with more than one. If the board decides not to work with Happy Faces, then we may have to work with more than one staffing agency, which is going to complicate matters.
Yeah, it just seems like we would want to start thinking about that contingency plan and even contacting some of these other staffing agencies and develop, one or two plans.
Well, one of the other plans we have as well, and I talked to Human Resources yesterday, is that to bring on board, if we were to try to staff through Fulton County, the average time it takes for Happy Faces to bring someone on board, say if we lose someone, it's 24 hours. With Fulton's personnel system, it's at best a 45-day process to replace somebody. So that's one of the reasons we went to the staffing agency in 2015 for a couple reasons. One was the Affordable Care Act and the restrictions put on that would force us to provide health insurance. So anybody, we were either going to have to limit hours to limit shifts to 29 hours, and then probably hire either 2 to 2.5 times the amount of staff and work people in multiple shifts to get through an election, or we could go to a staffing agency. We chose to go to a staffing agency, and we have found that they efficiently replace people. And it will take us, they're going to go through, Human Resources is going to go through and look at all of the positions and try to draft postings right now in case on July 16th it doesn't work. The issue with that is that it's going to be, we don't have the staff to do all those interviews for 400 positions. And then finance and Human Resources are probably going to have to hire more people to process all of those people. And even at best case scenario, if we were to be able to get all 45 positions posted on July 17th, you are looking at a minimum of 45 days, and that's usually when a department has one position. But if we have to hire 400 positions, getting that done ahead of the November election is going to be next to impossible. I mean, because we need those people in July or August, and we have some people that were scheduled to report end of June. So we are working on some backup plans, but if it fails, it may be that the municipalities and school districts have to do their own elections because we'll only have full-time staff on board.
I know some of my other colleagues probably want to chime in on this, so I will defer to them at this time.
Well, I'd like to kind of pick up. So it sounds to me like at a minimum, hopefully you've built out a calendar that has kind of drop dates in terms of, okay, if option one is we need to try another staffing agency. So if we don't start it by this date, that path gets closed off. I mean, obviously the first one is we keep swinging with the Happy Face contract. Option two is a second replacement agency or agencies. And the third is, as you mentioned, the hiring on permanent staff. And it sounds like you at least have that date pegged in the ground in terms of July 17th. 45 day lead time, that would end up end of August to give us a really short runway before the November election. And then
for Happy,
another date after that, after which it's like, okay, if all of these actions have failed, then at this point it might be July 31st. Then we'd have to go to the municipalities and the school board. So have you mapped the calendar out?
Yeah, and that is accurate. And then it also will cost us for those positions to bring them in through the county would be about $5.5 million. Through Happy Faces is $4.2 million. So it's going to cost more as well.
You're giving all the reasons why we should go down the one path. I think at this point, the board wants to understand, okay, we understand the reasons, but we just want to know what these avenues are, because as paths get cut off from us, we need to know that we still have safety valve routes.
Yeah, and
Whether
so
they're not ideal or not, that's not what we're debating here. It's just the fact that we have contingency plans.
yeah, and I think the human resources one is probably going to be at this point, that I need to talk to Felicia in purchasing, but I believe that might be the plan B at this point. I'll talk to her and see if one of the other firms that we used had quite a few no-shows. And I think they were one of the ones that would be able to fill quite a few positions. So I would almost rather go through the county than use one or two of those other agencies that are on the state contract.
I get all that. And I see Dr. Ruth's hand. She still has the floor, but if I would request that if you can at least map out in a quick memo to us, just say,
Sure.
these are the paths, these are the drop dead dates that if it doesn't happen by this point, this is taken off the table. That I think would be very informative for us in terms of what the next 60 days looks like in terms of how critical this is. Dr. Ruth, I'll give the floor back to you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add, this is a new time now. We just are coming out of a pandemic, and I know maybe the previous experiences of having a lot of no-shows, but this is a new time, and I think it's important to contact those other staffing agencies, and they may have a better chance at getting people who are willing to work and earn extra money. The other thing I would advise, it seems like you're going to go back to the BOC in July. Is that correct?
Yeah, the next available date is July 16th. They only have a recess meeting in July.
So I would recommend highly that in that meeting that you also map out or propose these contingency plans so that you're not losing time and having to go back again in August for the next meeting or so I would recommend mapping out those contingency plans so that if Happy Faces is voted down again, then you can immediately propose these other possibilities.
Yes, and I think yesterday, one of the commissioners that was going to vote for the item left, had to leave the meeting because of illness. So that was, at that point, the commissioners decided to hold the item until July 16th rather than voting on it.
Yeah, timing is of the essence.
Yeah, no, it is. We're at a critical stage, and so this has been it's been 6 weeks now that this item has been going. More than 6 weeks. It's been bounced around.
So, Mr. Barron, if as a follow-on item, if you could just a communication to the board, just outlining this as kind of the dates and timelines, and if you sounds like you have some costs you associated with some of them, that would be helpful. And then, like Dr. Ruth said, is we've got 30 days essentially to make sure at that next Board of Commissions meeting that we're swinging at everything we need to swing at that one time, because if one fails, then we've got the backup.
Yeah, and I'll make sure that Felicia has made contact with those. Annually, Felicia goes to the different vendors that are that have a statewide contract, and it's my understanding that she's done that this year already, but I will confirm that with her, and I'll put all that information in a memo.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Barron. Mr. Johnson's next, then I see Mr. Wingate's hand after him.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things. So I thank you for the clarification, Rick, on they didn't actually vote against it. Fulton County has this quirky rule that even if it's a majority of those there, if it doesn't get 4 votes, it gets pushed to the next one. So it'll be in the next meeting.
Correct.
So you still have an opportunity, but in that, 2 things I would suggest that you do. It seems like there was a big distinction between, or there was a big hang up on the commissioners wanting to talk about whether or not we're hiring Fulton County citizens and whether or not it should be temporary or permanent staff. While we can go around the circle about temporary versus permanent. This is an opportunity that I think that we probably have to do temporary right now, and we could look to permanent in the future maybe. But for this election, we always got to plan out. But it seems like a couple of things you could do in the meantime. Number one, going to the commissioners, solidifying your votes with a plan, as Dr. Ruth mentioned, like, look, these are the critical time periods that we have. If we don't have this available, then this is what will happen, meaning the cities will have to do it themselves. You can reach out to the cities to let them know, hey, if we don't get this passed, and this is why, then you're going to have to do your own elections, and maybe the cities can help you convince some of the commissioners to be present or be available or vote in favor of this legislation one way or the other, to go ahead so you can make a decision. But as a backup plan, as Dr. Ruth was mentioning as well, is it possible? You did say having one of the other statewide or one of the state approved or whatever terminology you use for the other temporary agencies. Why not maybe come up with a plan where, so you're not so caught that temporary agency A handles this aspect of elections, temporary agency B, and could be a plan C maybe, I don't know. But that way you're not relying solely on one temporary agency, but you're still having the benefit of using the temp agencies, and they're all approved anyway. So that could be something. I know it'll be a headache. I understand that. I understand that it would be probably an administrative nightmare, but at the same time, us not being able to handle elections for the cities at such a critical point this year would also be a travesty. So
correct. Yeah, and last year what we would do was the other two agencies, we coordinated it so that all three of them were in communication and trying to work together, because we did parse different positions out in order to try to have certain agencies supplying people for certain positions. But usually what we would end up doing is Happy Faces was always the backup for no-show, because they seem to be able to they have more people, more bandwidth to do that. But yeah, those are all things that I plan on working on, that the things that you mentioned. So, and then I will map out that memo. With regard to the cities, yeah, we need to let them know now that that item was held yesterday, that we're at this critical point where hopefully something will happen July 16th that will enable us just to go forward. And if it doesn't, we've got these backup plans.
Yeah, I would highly recommend reaching out to the cities, and the leadership of those cities can reach out to the commissioners. And some of the issues that the commissioners have with Happy Faces, the temporary process, et cetera, is something that could potentially be looked upon in the future. But in this short gap, we need a plan. We need to be able to move forward one way or the other. And you need to be very prepared that even if the commissioners say, no, we're not going to approve Happy Faces, something, as Dr. Ruth mentioned, okay, well, the next item on the agenda is, and move forward from there.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Wingate.
Yes, Director, in the past, the Fulton County Republican Party has gone out and asked a lot of our Fulton County residents, they happen to be Republicans, obviously, if they would work during the early voting cycle. Conversation I had a day or so ago, we believe that there are 100 or more people of this nature that would and are wanting to, in fact, work the entire early voting cycle. What's your reaction to that?
Well, that's fine, and we just have to get them to go through the staffing agency in order to do that, whatever staffing agency it is. I mean, What we want are, I mean, for us, the most efficient way to conduct early voting is to have people that will work the entire period. That way you have a team that works together from beginning to end. I know there are some other counties, the 3 counties in which I've worked, that's how early voting is conducted and how it's conducted efficiently. There are some other counties that will bring people in and they'll do 2 people, you know, one person will do 2 days here, another person will do 2 days here, and you constantly have people coming in and out through early voting. And so you're always dealing with people that, because processing voters during early voting is a little bit different than on election day. So we need people that can come through training, understand that the early voting process is a different process, that there are some subtle differences.
Sure.
And then that they are able to work the whole period. Having people work 2 days here, 3 days there, or 1 day, it creates issues within the polling place. So if we have committed people, they can go through whatever staffing agency we have to use in the future and work.
Okay, well, and I appreciate that. Thank you very much. We can, with that, your comments, we can, begin to then do more work on that. Now, you say that they'll have to go through the, Director, you say that they'll have to go through a staffing agency. So these people could not be intaken through the normal channels?
Right now, Fulton County doesn't hire, we don't run the early voting workers through because usually they're on board for four weeks, maybe 5 weeks.
Right.
If we put them in, then we have to pay, because of the Affordable Care Act, we have to pay them benefits if we bring them in. And so, and it takes longer. It's a 45-day process which is that's the quickest, basically, that process from the day of recruitment until we onboard them and they go through orientation. They have to go through the 2-day orientation when they're hired on by the county. So that ends up being, whereas a staffing agency, if we need somebody, if somebody isn't working out, we can tell the staffing agency, hey, this person's not working out, and they replace them. And 24 hours later, we have a new person, or less than 24 hours in some cases. So it's very easy for us to use a staffing agency and have them, as a partner in the process.
Right. No, and I appreciate that. I guess, where again, and I appreciate your clarification, Director. It's just that it would seem like those people that I'm referring to, I have referred to, in my mind, are volunteers. I mean, these are people that want to step up because of their civic duty, and fundamentally have agreed and understood that this is going to be a 3-4 week period and 14-hour days. We made that clear. So if there was a way that they could be put on in some fashion as being stand-up volunteers, is that a possibility?
You mean unpaid volunteer?
Well, no, I would say, whatever our regular pay scheme is, say even for election day workers.
Right. Well, election day workers.
That's up to you. That's not my call, but some way in which they could be intaken that way.
And if those 100 people applied through, they went through the process to get the onboarding process with the staffing agency, it's a pretty easy process, and it would actually enable us, because early voting, when we do 30 locations, that becomes difficult for us to staff. Yeah. And so we do need more people that are willing to work early voting, because it gets down towards the end and they start having a harder time. If we expand the number of sites, it becomes more difficult to get enough good people.
Right.
And so, I would encourage anyone who wants to work early voting to go through the staffing agency to do that.
Well, I'll tell you what, so said, so done. If you or staff can get us then what you want that to be procedurally to whatever staffing firm, however you're going to do that, please do that, because we're
Sure.
very anxious to get on that as soon as possible to reshore those that we've talked to in the past.
Yeah, and I can have Sharon put together a like a step-by-step on what to do to get apply through the current staffing agency, Happy Faces. That's the procedures that we're using at the moment, and I can have her put that together and email it to you.
Okay.
She's on this meeting, and I'll make sure, or if Mariska takes note, or Patrick follows up with her to make sure that we get a step-by-step onboarding process for early voting.
And I would encourage too, the Democrats do the same thing. I think that view is that going forward, the more Fulton County residents, voters, if you will, that we can have trying to help manage our elections process, the better off we are. I think,
And right now,
and I don't need all that, but having out of county employees, agencies bringing people in from Florida and wherever else they may be recruiting them from, does not, and I think maybe we all don't agree, but I think common sense tells us that those people that are here are clearly more dedicated to the integrity and the viability of our elections process.
Yeah, and we have 80, we got a report from Happy Faces, 87% of the people that work for us, whether it's in our office or through early voting, 87% of those are Fulton County residents. And there was a change in SB 202 as well, though. Now, for election day, you were required to be a Fulton County resident. Now SB 202 allows counties to recruit people from out of county. So the number, there could be people working on election day from here on out in Fulton County that aren't actually Fulton County residents. So that's a change. Now, I believe what the law says is that we have to ask for the other county's permission to recruit people from those other counties. But usually on election day, we don't have any issues with finding people. It's more towards in the early voting recruitment that it can be challenging to staff 30 sites. And we plan on increasing that next year to 36 or 42 sites. So we will definitely need another 100 people if the Republican Party wants to refer those to our staffing.
Do we, and then I'll shut up. I know I'm taking a lot of time here, but one last question, and I appreciate everything that you're saying, and I'll look forward to that, that process so we can do our work. But in terms of these municipal elections, they're obviously a lot lower vote turnout. Do we still require the same number of poll managers and workers for these elections as we would say for the 2020 cycle?
So the difference between the municipal elections and the other elections is that typically the early voting count is lower for municipal election. At least the percentage of people that vote early, or the percentage of people that vote, fewer people vote early in a municipal election than they do in the larger election. So more people go into the polls on election day, and fewer people also vote by absentee in those elections. So more people are showing up, and especially now the Atlanta race is going to be very competitive across the board. So we're anticipating a pretty high turnout in Atlanta, and usually Atlanta has, about 10%. They might have a 30-35% turnout, where some of the other municipalities are down in the 10 to 15% range. So we definitely, I think, are going to have a pretty high turnout in the city of Atlanta. With the East Plus and the East Plus, that could also affect the turnout countywide. And so I think, and just because of the engagement of voters now, I think also we should expect a higher turnout in probably many of the smaller municipalities this year. But I think if we offer more early voting sites, and people are getting used to voting early more and more, I think voter behavior is changing. Hopefully we can get a higher turnout for early voting in the fall as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wingate. Madam Vice Chair, did you have some, and I have some follow-on questions after her. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director. I was wondering, since this situation we're in with Happy Faces is sort of a unique situation, is there anything that our department can do moving forward to prevent this reliance on an outside entity to conduct elections? Because I did hear your challenges with not having the bandwidth to train, and then the stipulations around requiring health benefits for employees that work a certain number of hours or what have you. What I'm concerned about is kind of giving, this much weight to an outside entity, that if the Board of Commissioners decide against it, for instance, cities like Chat Hills, really small cities like Fairburn, they may not have a big problem of conducting their own elections because they generally just have less than a handful of polls. But for City of Atlanta, that's just a different conversation. And Alpharetta, the biggest city, Sandy Springs and Roswell, it just won't translate. So I'm hoping, for instance, we are a good client for Happy Faces, but it may be one day we were not their best clients. So in other words, I'm just trying to see, is there any way to prevent from being here again?
Well, one thing that we've done is, we're going to try to increase our staff by 9 next month, and then add another 11 before next year. I think that the more people we have full-time that we're working for the department, that is better, because they're going to have more of a vested interest in the success of the election. So if we can get we have, and I can share this with the board, we have done some cost analyses of what it would cost the county to bring on people full-time and keep them, for the full 2-year cycle. Usually what happens for a 2-year cycle is that we can keep people busy full-time 16 to 18 months of that 24-month cycle. Mm-hmm. So the trick is that we need to be able to, with the county, we can maybe onboard everyone, keep them for those 14 to 18 months, and then furlough them until the next cycle. That's because one thing that's difficult is if we bring all these people on full time, we can't keep all of them busy full time for 2 years. And that's the last thing we want, is to have, for 6 months of the year, have a big group of people with little or nothing to do. But yeah, we have learned from the post-November, January election. We have been using supplemental staff this year, and the grant has helped us with that. And so what we've been able to do is make a determination of how many people we can keep busy during off time. And we've had a lot of projects to do that this year.
So you mentioned the grant, we're still able to use that, or was that part of Senate Bill 202 effective immediately? We
can use those funds through June 30th because we received those funds before Senate Bill 202 passed.
Well, I knew some of the parts of the bill was effective immediately and others had to take effect. But you were saying that there was might be a chance that you're going to lose funding to pay for back invoices for Happy Faces. Was that because of that June 30 deadline or something else?
Yeah, it has to do with the June 30th deadline. And then we've had the commissioners have voted in favor of the not to exceed spending authority for Happy Faces. It's been a 3-2 vote, 2 meetings. And with an absent member or an abstention in those 2 meetings. Yesterday, there would have been another absent member. And so that's, I think, why the decision was made to hold the item until the next meeting.
Rick, if I may, Madam Vice Chair, we have researched the issue, and unless a legislative act is expressly retroactive, it's prospective. And so the June 30th date is the problem with the grant funds for those matters, even that they held or didn't approve, because the only opportunity to come back will be in July, and the deadline to have utilized the funds will have passed.
Okay. Because my concern is if the Board of Commissioners is saying that this is not an option for us, even with the knowledge that it would negatively impact us conducting the elections effectively, because even if the municipalities do conduct their own elections, we're still responsible for anything that happens during those elections. So this board wouldn't be absolved of any errors that's made or any process that's not done correctly. So, and thank you so much, Ms. Ringer, for that, because that did provide clarity. My concern is the Board of Commissioners saying no, and I'm hoping that maybe somebody has reached out to Rick or your staff saying we have a workaround if it's not, if we, what I'm saying, if we're not going to approve this, we're going to make sure that the DRE has everything it needs, the staff, the bandwidth, or is it just the BOC telling you no to Happy Faces, and now you figure out how to conduct the elections? Are they communicating with you? Because
we've been working with the county manager's office on this, as well as personnel and finance, to explore all the options going forward. And we presented something for more staffing to county manager's office a few weeks ago. And so I think we are going to request more staff this year going into next year. Because we also want to reduce our reliance on supplemental staff. And a lot of the supplemental staff that we have, we've got some really good people that are working for that staffing agency that really put their hearts into their jobs and would love to have full-time positions. And those are the types of people that we need working for us going forward as well.
Okay, that's it for me, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. I want to stay, Mr. Wingate, go ahead, and then I've got my questions.
Sorry, Chair, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. Very quickly on this, I believe, could be mistaken, that most of the payment or invoicing payment to Happy Faces came from the CTCL grant. So help me, I understand, or I hear that we now have a June 30th deadline to pay. Why can't those funds be used until June 30th to pay whatever outstanding invoices that may be due Happy Faces?
Well, that's what the county's going to be looking at doing, an emergency PO. I think whether the county manager can authorize those past due invoices to be paid. And that discussion is happening today. Because we need to make sure that we get our vendor paid, and because they've been fronting those salaries. And I think, Cheryl, I think, wanted to chime in on that.
Well, and it's a discussion that you and I had yesterday, Rick, about the I forget the term, the extension of authority, something that Felicia needs, the extension of payment authority. You know what I'm talking about, Rick?
The extension of payment authority for wasn't that passed yesterday by the BOC for the county manager?
No.
Is that what you're talking about?
I'm talking about the extension of authority under the Happy Faces contract, like because they didn't approve that item. There you go, the not to exceed spending authority. Thank you. I'm sorry. So Mr. Wingate, it also has something to do with the authority that the county has already granted the department and the purchasing department to pay invoices to Happy Faces. That authority has ended with the amount of money we've already paid. So implicit in the item that they have held is an extension of that authority. And so because we don't have that authority is a problem as to whether or not they can move forward and pay. What Rick is saying is that the county manager is trying to determine whether or not he, under his executive authority, can provide those payments, but then that still has to go back before the board. And we don't know what the board would do and how happily they would look at the county manager in extending said authority that they expressly haven't ruled.
Okay, well, thank you, Ms. Ringer, for that. Let me just end with this. Then what happens to any unused CTCL funds?
Those, I believe those are going to be returned to CTCL. Now, if we, before the votes yesterday, we were, of the $10.7 million, we had less than 126,000 left of that. But now it looks like we're going to be adding $750,000 for that because of the no ink item that failed 3-1 and the not to exceed spending authority happening. So those two items there were $750,000, and we're going to, so hopefully the county manager has some authority to pay those back, do invoices, and then we can use the grant funds on those still, because we have until June 30th to do that.
So we only have $175,000 left of the CTCL funds?
If everything would have passed yesterday, we would have had, I think, less than 126,000 left of the 10.7 million to finish out the grant. But now it's possible that we will have 876,000 or something, because the poll pad purchase wasn't approved. It failed on a 3-1 vote, and the not to exceed spending authority didn't happen yesterday. So, but the county manager does have some emergency authority in certain circumstances. So I think what's going to happen is finance and the county attorney have to make a determination as to whether the county manager can pay those invoices with the grant funds. And that would be optimal so that we don't have to bring
invoices
it back.
going to have to be paid.
Yeah. Well, and it'd be better because then Fulton County taxpayers don't have to foot that bill of $350,000.
Correct. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wingate. Mr. Johnson had a follow-on question, and then I'll launch into mine. Mr. Johnson, no, or?
You're on mute.
Okay.
Can't unmute.
Okay. All right, well then I'll go ahead and ask, so I want to walk down that path a little bit so that we exhaust all our opportunities to use grant funds. And so like you said, it's $750,000 that will have to come out of the general fund. How does that impact our or your operation budget going forward? And specifically, does that squeeze out something else, squeeze out $750,000 in activities that we needed and were planning on for this upcoming election? Or is it just they'll have to find a bucket of money to pay that with, but we're still okay going into November?
Brenda can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we have about 690,000, somewhere around there, in salary savings from this year that was going to be used to help us with some future purchases. We let the commissioners know that we're going to come back with the soundings request for about $3.5 million worth of equipment purchases, probably July 16th. And in addition, we would then have to add the $400,000 no ink item to that. So that would go up to around $4 million.
Yeah.
If the county manager isn't able to pay those back invoices through his authority, then we would add another 350,000 to that. Our goal is right now is to have a set of equipment for early voting, a set of equipment for election day, and equipment for training. We don't want to pull equipment from training towards the end of early voting, or towards the end of training, so that we can put equipment into election day, which is what we have to do now. And we don't want to have to turn equipment around on the weekend before election day. We don't want to have to take early voting equipment, turn it around on that weekend, and then send it out. We want to be able to have equipment that is specified for certain purposes to make the operation more efficient, because when you have to turn around equipment on the weekend before early voting, or the weekend after early voting before election day, that is a major challenge for staff to do its normal items, and then have to conduct logic and accuracy testing on a bunch of equipment, and then get it delivered out in a short period of time. But I don't think it's going to have an impact on us. I think what it's going to have an impact on is the fact that there are certain bills that were going to be paid by CTCL's grant that are now going to get shifted over to Fulton County taxpayers.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was, there's two, on the Fulton County taxpayer side, there's two scenarios here. One is that here's an extra $750,000 that they're having to pay because, versus what you're saying is that actually we can just figure out a way to absorb that and squeeze out some of the other things that we had intended to do. But you're saying that even in that case, the impact in terms of our operations, you feel is manageable, not ideal, but manageable.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to just make one comment about I don't have any other questions about that particular topic, but in terms of the monthly report, I don't want to go through them now, but there are a number of items on there in terms of the timeline that the dates have passed in terms of their due date. And there are comments about it, you're enhancing them, you're waiting on information. I think it would be helpful for us to have more information about that, kind of what the reset new target dates are going forward. So I don't know if that's something that between now and the next meeting, you and your team can just provide an amended version of that, just to give a little bit more information, or and then definitely starting in the July meeting, I think that would be more informative for us, just to understand exactly what the new push out dates are going to be on those.
Yes, and we have Strategy Office has created created or implemented access for the board members. Okay. They're going to send instructions for the board members to be able to access the Achieve It. That'll have the backup that's been uploaded, that paperwork, and you'll be able to see the notes on each one of those items as well. And you can go through that before the meetings, or at any point. And the Strategy Office, if any board member needs training on how to get in, access it, and go through it, they're going to offer that to you as well. And that, I think the access part was completed last week. And so I think we will, you should be seeing something shortly, because they have your contact information on how to access the Achieve It plan.
All right. Thank you. Don't want to belabor the point, but your team invested a lot of time and energy in it. The board, we invested a day work session going through this. I'm not going to let this go. I do think I want to track this and understand if deadlines are slipping, why they're slipping, and what the new projected dates are. I think it's a great work plan. So let's utilize it to its fullest extent.
Well, if there are a couple items on there, if you want Ralph or Nadine to chime in on a couple of those things, I mean, they're prepared to.
I think for the purposes of today's meeting, there wasn't anything that rang any alarm bells in my head, but I just noticed that as I was going through in terms of just this. Also, our board packet becomes a public record. So I do think others that are coming in and looking at these documents, to have them be informed as well will be helpful. But I do want to open up to potential cans of worms here. I just want to find out if there is any other comments or information you can share with us or the Fulton County staff about two items, and I understand the first one being the warehouse security incident. I understand that's still under investigation, but I don't know if there's anything that y'all can share and update the board about. And the other is in regard to the open records article that came out earlier this week, or I guess it was earlier this week. I don't know if there is an update or any information that y'all can share with us about those two items. I just feel like they're elephants in the room that we need to.
Yeah, with regard to the sheriff, is my understanding the sheriff's office, they are supposed to be releasing the video at any time, and that the investigation is either complete or going to be complete, and then they were going to release all that information. So I will have to check and see where that's at.
Okay.
And get with Sheriff Labat, because I had anticipated, we were hoping that 2 weeks ago yesterday, that the video would have been released. With regard to the article earlier this week about the absentee ballot Dropbox forms, Nadine and her team were working on that yesterday, and so she can address that right now, because she they went through all those records yesterday. Nadine, are you there? I had asked her to speak on it.
Yeah.
And just for clarification purposes, as it relates to the Dropboxes, we're talking about also, will she address the chain of custody, those forms?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah, and she can go through the process of what happens with once her teams get to those, get to the Dropbox, what they do, and where they go from there. Nadine, are you there? I see her on here. Just a second.
Well, let's do this. Can we just while y'all are trying to locate her, can we put a pin in this, and then when she's let's go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, and then come back when she is available, and we can interrupt while we're talking at that point. Mr. Wingate, yes, I see your hand.
Before we move on, Mr. Chair, one other quick question. By the way, welcome and good to see you, Mr. Eskridge. I think that we welcome you with open arms. Quick question I have, and I think it probably may be directed to you, Mr. Eskridge, is that the board received the latest of organization charts on June 1st. There is, in essence, a silo of open requisitions for hire for the absentee ballot component.
Yes, sir.
And can you give us just a quick briefing where you're at with staffing that? And then I'll end up with this as my final component of this question is that unit, if you will, we'll call it the absentee ballot unit, that will report directly to you?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So as far as the formulating of that team, as it stands now, those positions have to go before the Board of Commissioners. And so that is, we're projecting to do that next month at that meeting. And in between time, we were trying to justify bringing them on this year. So we had to find the funds in the budget for cost savings. So that is all being worked out, and we were able to find the amount to bring them on. So the next step is to, again, bring that before the Board of Commissioners, which is scheduled for next month.
Okay, sir. Well, thank you for that. So do we have any of the other, as I will call them, in red areas of the organization chart that are also unfunded?
So all the positions marked in red are the ones that we're taking before the board next month.
Okay, thank you very much. So all of those positions are being taken forward. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Wingate. Yeah, Dr. Root.
Just a quick question, Rick, about the RFP that was put out. Did we get?
Yeah, we have 3 responses, and we have 3 responses. We have a 5-person committee going through them. The evaluations of those are due tonight, or by, I guess midnight tonight. That's when purchasing wants them back. And so the target is to put those on the July 16th agenda.
Okay, great. And then my final comment is a few meetings ago, board meetings ago, we talked about a communication packet on SB 202 that would be provided to us as board members as we are communicating with the public. Has Jessica or developed that? I just wanted to put that on your radar so that we can.
We had a lengthy meeting about that, and Jessica compiled a lot of information. I don't know if she's on here. She can speak to that, or if Regina can, but I know that she is putting something together. Yes. Because
Good morning. This is Regina. Yes, Jessica had to step away for another meeting, but she is working on that, and our team has been going over some of those strategies, and we'll present those to you, Rick, as well as to the board, I'm sure, as soon as she has everything in place.
So I would like to have that as a topic on our July meeting, please.
All right, I will let her know.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you for the reminder, Dr. Ruth, on that one. Okay, before we move on to the next, is Ms. Williams, has she joined our call yet to talk about?
I called her, and I'm having Derek.
All right, I apologize. I'm back. I was on an emergency call. I apologize.
That's okay. Well, thank you. And I don't know if they'd let you know that. So we wanted an update or briefing on the Dropbox article kind of process, and then an update or status on where we're at with that, please.
So Nadine, before you came on, they just briefly go over the process of what happens when your teams go out to go to the Dropboxes, that process, and then talk about what you found.
Okay. So the team was required to be teams of 2. So each day, teams of 2 went out to check the boxes. Of course, everything's on video surveillance. They picked up the box, they picked up the ballots, counted the ballots at the box, placed the ballots in a sealed bag, and took those, and then finished their routes. Said most of the routes had maybe 6 or 8 stops. There were about 4 teams that went out daily, including weekends. Then they would take, when they finished their route, they would take all the sealed bags to the registration office. On that form that they drop off the boxes, the team of 2 has signed the form to indicate how many ballots they picked up. The registration staff would then recount the ballots that the team turns in. They would also sign that form, and then that form would be filed in our office. So we met with the SOS investigator yesterday in regards to the article that was placed. There are actually some contradictions in the article that we're going to send a statement to the investigator about this morning to let him know, because there's, for many of the Dropboxes, the forms have 2 sites on the actual form. So and for the article itself, it'll say that they received one but did not receive the other, which is not possible since those are on the same form. So we're going to send a list of those contradictions to the SOS investigator this morning. But there's 8 entries on the spreadsheet that we're researching, but for the most part, like I said, we'll be sending a contradiction statement to the SOS investigator regarding the article.
Rick, did you have anything else you want to add to that, or any board members have questions, follow-on questions? All right, hang on. I see Mr. Johnson, then Mr. Wingate.
So I have a question about how do we respond to quote unquote articles. One of the things that I found is that some, just because it's printed doesn't mean it's legitimate. So what are we going to do as a board? Because I do understand that there's a lot of eyes on us, and I understand that we have to be as transparent as possible. But at the same time, we're putting a lot of staff hours into responding to allegations sometimes that may not even be founded. We see a lot where somebody says, this happened, but it didn't necessarily happen that way. We spend more time trying to disprove what did happen or what didn't happen, but we are taking it from anywhere. So are we going to come up with some type of policy or mechanism to know exactly which ones should we respond to, which ones are relative, which ones are blogs, which ones are opinion as opposed to fact?
Well, one thing I can tell you, Aaron, is that just a brief response is that I think yesterday there were probably at least 225 staff hours put into this yesterday, and maybe I don't know what it was the day before. It was less, but yeah, we put a bunch of time into going through and making sure that what was in that article is not accurate. And it's taking away from other duties.
Is that a Jessica question? I mean, in terms of.
Yeah, or maybe Regina.
We'll talk to Jessica about it. I just think we need to be mindful. There are going to be articles, opinions, blogs, all these different things are going to come up because we're in such a hyper-partisan or hypersensitive, I should say, posture right now, not just in Fulton County, not just in Georgia, but nationwide. It's no secret. And we're spending a lot of time, people are throwing spaghetti and seeing what sticks. And we just got to make sure that when we're responding to legitimate concerns as opposed to things that are just out there. And I also understand we do have a public relations aspect that we have to make sure that, we appear to be transparent, but at the same time, we have to be mindful of what we're responding to. That's my only concern.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Wingate.
Real quick tag on question to that. And for that, Mr. Johnson, I do tend to agree with you. Unfortunately, we can't control all of that. We're recipients, unfortunately. So I applaud what you're saying in the fact that let's try to find a way that can be systematically worked through, because we certainly don't want to look like we're non-responsive. To me, that's worse. So thank you for that input. My quick question is along those lines, and this I ask this because I don't know, but in terms of at EPC, those other locations, Director, where we're storing, the chain of command forms, the ballot forms, all of the things that have to be legally stored, are those all secured in a fireproof environment?
I would have to ask the clerk of Superior Courts area over there. I'm unsure what that is. I mean, the warehouse, I don't know if that English Street warehouse is, parts of it aren't fireproof. What's inside that, maybe Nadine, she's probably been inside the clerk of Superior Court area. Nadine, do you know?
I would honestly have to say that I do not believe it's fireproof. So no, I don't believe it's fireproof.
Okay.
One point here, Mr. Wingate.
Yes, ma'am.
What they're saying and under OCGA, under the election code 212500, after an election, then the department doesn't have custody and control over the documents anymore. They are placed into the custody and control of the clerk.
Okay.
And so we can look into this and express your concerns to the clerk, but I don't know that this body would be able to make the determination one way or another. I do think, Rick, this is something too, though, that maybe as they're looking at Election Central and providing you all new space, if that function is coming with you all to a new building, that might be something you can ask Dream about.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And again, we don't need to spend any more time. I think you're answering that question as we go, but I just know when this issue of the alarm at EPC went off, if that's a fire alarm and the place is burning down, for crying out loud, we've got extremely valuable records somewhere there.
Excellent.
And, I think that, and I appreciate what you're saying, Ms. Ringer, that, yeah, if not, we need going forward to make sure that we do have that level of security as well.
Yeah, and what I'll do with regard to Dream, because the plans for the new facility, I signed off on those 2 days ago for Election Central. It's going to be a facility down about a 300,000 square foot facility for us.
Right.
It's going to be either in Palmetto or Union City. Will be the new facility, and there will be some other county, I think, warehouses for the county in that facility. There's going to be kind of a campus there, but our space, everything will be housed in one place, and it's set to be 300,000 square feet.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to also say that for most of the documents that we're required to have by the state, there are carbon copies. So if there was something to happen at our warehouse, there is a copy at the Secretary of State. The Kentucky Superior Court has a copy, and then and a lot of files are electronic.
Yeah, and Ms. Williams, that's a fair comment, but I believe, though, accordingly, we do have to have the original copies for that 2-year period.
Thank you, Mr. Wingate. Any other questions for Ms. Williams on this topic, or Mr. Barron? All right, well, thank you. With that concludes this agenda item, and we'll move on to the next one. And under new business, the first item, number 5, is an acknowledgement of Madam Vice Chair Nurden's years of service. This will be her concluding meeting on her term this year. And I'll just say, I mean, obviously, I'm sure my colleagues have comments. In the short time that I've had the pleasure of working with you, I'm always remarkable. I find remarkable everything you know about elections and different places for information, data, and other relationships across the state that we always should be thinking about with regard to the work that we're doing. So I wish our time together were a little longer, but I did want to at least acknowledge and thank you for the brief time that we had, and how impressed and grateful I was for what I learned from you in this short time. So
Thank you.
With that, I'll hand it off to my other colleagues. I saw Mr. Wingate's hand first, then Dr. Ruth, and then Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, let me quickly, just as a point of order, I don't believe that we did any covering in terms of the department, in terms of the registration report and the administration report. So I don't mind however you want to handle it, but just as a point of order, that was not done.
Okay. Thank you. Let's put a pin in that, and I'll circle back to that.
Well, then let me finish up. Bernetta, you have been just a joy to know, and thank goodness that though your term has expired and you're not going to be on this board any longer, that I know that several of us have made a great friend.
Thank you.
And I have admired not only your knowledge, your tenacity at this stuff. I mean, you just dig in where I didn't even know there was a dig in. And I just want to express from me personally to you that you've been a delight to work with. And I look forward to, any continuance that we will, potentially have, as days go forward. So thank you very much, my dear. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Ruth.
Yeah, I just, Marky stole my word, tenacious, as it
I
relates
make up
to-
the words, Kathleen. That's my job.
Yeah.
But that's
well, it's truly, Bernetta, you've been truly amazing to work with. I remember when I joined the board a few years ago, you were so welcoming to me, and just, I learned so much from you. I mean, you are committed to always learning about election laws, processes, to ensure that the registration and election process is efficient and effectively provided to all of the citizens of Fulton. And you've been just a really great colleague, and most of all, a dear friend. And I also commend you on always willing to work to be collaborative and work in a bipartisan manner. And you will truly be missed, my friend.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the plaque. It is so nice. I appreciate all of you.
Mr. Johnson, you want to?
It was my pleasure.
I don't want to interrupt her because I'll get in trouble. But we will miss working with you. I think everybody has said all the words that you can think of. Nobody knows this stuff better than you. You always, the slightest word that we get wrong, you'll be the first one to say, that's what it's supposed to be. And we always appreciated you getting us all the information from the Secretary of State's office that we didn't even know existed. The books, the manuals, the notes, the memos, the meetings that were being set up. And we always wonder, but one thing we do know is that you may not be on the board, but you will continue to be on the board, because I can tell that you will just be around as much as possible. And I think that we might be able to still lean on you if we need to.
Thank you.
Don't change your number. We might need it.
And I do want to add about my successor. I couldn't have picked a better person if I handpicked her and groomed her myself. Terry Crawford, it will be a great successor and a collaborative member of this board. So I did want to shout her out too. And thank you. And I think the department is going in a really good direction. And I'm really hopeful for just all positive outcomes. So thank you all.
Mr. Barron, do you or your staff want to join the chorus here?
Yeah, I wanted to echo, I guess I'm going to echo the thoughts that Aaron had too, because I was always amazed that she was always in Firefly and the Buzz and was always up on all the memos coming out of the Secretary of State's office. So sometimes I think she even read them before we even knew they were in our email boxes. So yeah, that was always, I guess, refreshing. So anyway, yeah, you and I talked recently, Vernetta, and we plan on continuing even after your service here to stay in contact.
Thank you so much, Director.
Anyone else on the staff would like to say something? Okay, well, I think everything that everybody says, let us continue in your honor going forward, hold those as our standards of operations and conduct and discipline to our board service. But as we've all said, thank you for your service. And we look forward to your continued involvement in whatever form with these activities going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Wingate, I did want to go back to, as you said, the monthly reports. I do know that Mr. Barron did run through the numbers in terms of registration when he gave out his report out. And then I'm looking at the administration report, but I didn't know if there was anything else any of the staff members wanted to add, or if there were specific questions around those two different components before we moved on.
Yeah, it's just good to hear from the chiefs if they've got anything that needs to be added to this reporting. Yeah.
Yes, please. So I'll open the floor up for any of the chiefs to add information or briefing for us on these two topics.
Ralph or Nadine?
Good morning, board.
Good morning.
This is Ralph Jones. Just wanted to point out that voter roll will be dropping a little soon. We're going to have a process that moves the inactive voters to delete very soon. It's probably not going to be that big of a difference because our inactive numbers are not that high anymore. And the board is, the Secretary of State is going to start to run the NCOA process. They are scheduling it for August, they were saying. And they're going to try to get a second one in if they can later on in the year. That's all I have based on any questions you have. I'm ready to receive them at this time.
Any questions for Mr. Jones? All right. Ms. Williams, did you have anything else? Or were there other questions from the board? Ms. Williams.
I did not, thank you.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Mr. Wingate, thank you for pointing that out. I appreciate that. Okay, with that, we'll go ahead and close that item out and then move on to item 6 under new business, and that is the approval of drop boxes throughout the county. Mr. Barron.
That is going, Nadine's going to go over this. She worked with GIS and made sure that these were placed in the optimal places.
Ms. Williams, and should we be looking at the map that is in our packet? Is that?
Yes.
Okay. It's on page 36, colleagues. All right, Ms. Williams, I'm sorry, please proceed.
Okay, we looked at, Rick said, we worked with GIS to see where we could possibly position the 8 boxes we're permitted to have to evenly distribute them throughout the county. Of course, with SB 202, they are required to be at an advanced voting location as well. So we mapped that. We should have 3 attachments. One lists all the advanced voting locations we're proposing, and noted in there is where those drop boxes will be as well. And the map, of course, shows the population of the amount of voters that would be have that drop box accessible. So in short, we did as much as we could with 8 boxes compared to 38 throughout Fulton County.
All right. Questions or comments from my colleagues on the board on this? Mr. Johnson?
Can we go over, there was a discussion about, and it came up before, but I don't think we've discussed it publicly. If, according to SB 202, that if it's a municipal election, each city gets one, how does that work? And can we talk about that?
That is if the city itself is conducting its own election, they are required to have a drop box. Even though it's a municipal election and we're conducting the election, we're still limited to 8 boxes. Just for the cities that are conducting their own election, they're required to have a drop box.
Okay, and can you say which cities are conducting their own?
The only 2 is Palmetto and Mountain Park. Those 2 are conducting their own election. But we will be having the county election. For Palmetto, the county election will be in a different building per the city of Palmetto's request. They want us to keep our location at Palmetto Library, and they're going to use their city hall. And for Mountain Park, they're having Cherokee County conduct their election, but we will share space with the county election and the municipal election. But we will be contacting those 2 cities to make sure that there is signage that informs voters not to drop the county election ballots in their drop boxes.
Which I was about to ask about. So in this, for cities like Chat Hills and Palmetto, well, Chat Hill was Palmetto, for instance, did we have a drop box down there during our previous elections, and is it still there, and will they use that, or will they have to get their own?
Chattahoochee Hills did have a drop box, but we will not be utilizing that drop box. That has been removed. We are conducting their election, so they will not have their own drop box. The closest drop box to those voters will be at, I believe, at New Beginnings in Fairburn or the South Annex.
I'm sorry, I said Chat Hills by mistake, but I meant Palmetto. They'll be conducting their own election. We had a box there. Will they be able to use that box?
Our box will no longer be in Palmetto. That box has been removed. But the city of Palmetto will have to put their own box for their municipal election. As far as our box is concerned, the voters will have to go to the nearest box in that area, which I believe is going to be South Annex or New Beginnings.
So do we do a program like renting our boxes to the municipalities or selling them to them, since we had quite a few?
No, we have not done that.
Just an idea. That's it for me for now, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you, Nadine.
Mr. Johnson. Madam Vice Chair, you have the floor.
Yeah, so I think that now Deputy General Counsel Sarah Beck from the Attorney General's office, she sent an email saying that for each municipal election, each of Fulton's municipalities would need at least 1 drop box for the municipality that is holding a municipal election. And I think that from what I'm hearing what you say, Nadine, you're interpreting that to mean that the Dropbox is only for the cities that are conducting its own elections. Is that what I hear you say? Because I reached out because it was unclear, and I know that the Secretary of State, not the Secretary of State, I'm sorry, the State Elections Department may have been waiting to respond to the counties who had this concern, because we do have 15 cities. And I think I sent Mr. Juan and Rick the response from the Deputy General Counsel for the Attorney General's office, who said that she interpreted the law to mean that if a municipal election is holding an election, municipality is holding an election, that they have, that by law they need at least one Dropbox per municipality. And I was just, if anybody wanted to add clarity there, I mean, like we've learned with the laws, and when this county and state and the legislature disagrees, you know, I'm not sure. So what I'm hearing you say, Nadine, is that Fulton County is interpreting that law to say that one Dropbox for each municipality that's conducting its own election and not that's holding a municipal election, which is what Ms. Beck, she interpreted the law to say that for each municipal election, that municipality that's holding an election, that they must have at least one Dropbox. More Dropboxes help voters, so that's the only reason why I'm pushing that.
Right.
And only for municipal elections.
Yes, we forwarded the email that you're referencing to the Secretary of State. We're not leaving anything up to our interpretation of the SBO2. We refer everything to them, and they confirm that that is not correct. That is only for cities that are conducting their own election. But we sent the SOS that exact email for them to interpret for us.
But wait a minute, Secretary, the not Secretary of State, the State Election Office is who forwarded it to the Attorney General's office for their clarification. What I'm hearing you say is they then got that clarification and just disagreed with it.
I think I'm remembering the email right from the Secretary of State, what they came back, and I think many counties do not conduct elections for their municipalities. So I believe the law, if a county conducts it basically countywide, which is almost what we do, if we conduct the election, then we're limited, the municipalities are limited to our limit. So any municipality that isn't having us conduct their election, they get a Dropbox. But any of them that join in and have us do it, it then limits them. That's what we got back from the Secretary of State.
The Secretary of State, not the State Elections Department.
Yeah. Secretary of State's office responded to the email that you sent. I think you got the response from the Attorney General's office, and then he forwarded that on to the state to make sure that we were understanding what the Attorney General said was correct. And so then they came back and told us it's only the cities that are conducting their own election that get a separate one. And Fulton is going to be limited to 8 because for 1 per 100,000.
So do we have 8 plus the 2 for Mountain Park and Palmetto?
Mountain Park and Palmetto.
Will we, in other words, will we be able to have 10?
No, because the Palmetto voters that are voting in that election can only drop their ballots off in that box. They can't drop them in ours, and vice versa. So our voters are not to drop the ballots off in the Palmetto box. They have to drop it in our Palmetto box. And the same would be true in the Mountain Park.
Are you saying you're gonna have 2 in Palmetto?
Well, no, we won't have one in Palmetto. But I guess like at New Beginning Senior Center, which is where I think would be the closest one for us, or the South Annex to Palmetto. So any voters, if somebody from Palmetto wants to vote in the county election, say in the East Block and the East Block, they would have to take their absentee by mail for us and take it to either New Beginnings or South Annex. And then they would have to take their city absentee ballot to the ballot box in Palmetto, which is what, and their voters are going to have to check in at 2 different locations as well, in Palmetto and in Mountain Park.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess we just have to make an announcement to let the voters know they're not going to, are they going to have 2 different ballots?
Yes, yes, because Palmetto will have its own city ballot.
Right.
And we will have the county ballot for that.
Now, Nadine just said that for the cities that's conducting their own elections, they're required by law to have a ballot box. What I think I just heard you saying, please forgive me if I misheard you, they actually are not going to have their own ballot box.
Palmetto would have their own ballot box. I mean, we can loan one to them because we've got a bunch that are unused now. But then they just have to put it inside their whatever facility they're using for early voting, and it can only be open during those hours.
I got you. I just wanted to make sure I understood Nadine, because what I heard Nadine say is that the ballot boxes for the municipalities that's required by law is for Mountain Park because they're conducting their own, and Palmetto because they're conducting their own.
Right.
However, there are no ballot boxes in either of those places.
Well, we had to remove. I don't think we didn't have one in Mountain Park. The one in Palmetto, we're removing all of our absentee ballot drop boxes around the county, and so Dream is going to remove all of them. Because even the ballot drop boxes we had, they can't stay in the places they are. They have to be inside the early voting facility.
Okay.
And Ms. Nurden, we were hoping the email was correct. We would love to put out more boxes, but we were just not permitted to do so.
But I understand. I just don't. I guess my question is between the Attorney General's office and the Secretary of State's office. Because the state election board didn't know what, then they needed clarity. And from my understanding, that clarity came from the Attorney General. So when then the letter from Sarah Begg, the email from Sarah Begg was then forwarded to another entity that said, actually, it's not true. So, I mean, it's just how laws can be interpreted. And this board has kind of been, in the middle of different opinions about law. So I just wanted to make sure, I see if it's your understanding that we're required by law to have it in Mountain Park and Palmetto, then I'm not understanding why don't you have that if that's what you believe that the law is saying.
No, we're not saying that we're required to have it. The city is required to have it because the city is conducting their own election.
I got you. So
we're required to have
this body is not responsible if those cities decide not to do a ballot box. That's what I'm hearing.
Exactly. It's their responsibility to put out the box and manage the box if they are conducting their own municipal election.
Okay, so if the city, I got you. I mean, that I get that rationale better now that you kind of added that context. So thank you for that. What I'm fearful of is that ultimately that responsibility is just not on the city and the city clerk, that it will somehow blow back on this board. But hopefully it won't. Hopefully it won't, because Mountain Park is less than 1,000 residents. So it's a really small city, and so is Palmetto. But I just thank you for clarity on that.
No problem.
Any other questions for the staff in terms of the recommendations for the Dropbox locations? All right, if not, yeah, Mr. Wingate, please.
I'm sorry, just one quick question. What was the reason to select Milton Library versus the Alpharetta Library?
We were trying to reach out to the voters east and west. So that's the only reason why we did that. And plus we were trying to put one in as close as much as we could in the commissioner districts.
Okay.
So, but if you want to revisit that, we can, and I can
Oh,
have them
no,
do the map.
no, Nadine, I was just curious. The only reason being is that, you know, in terms of the traffic, the parking facility, you know, Alpharetta Library, you know, has a pretty good platform there, simply because, you know, we've got massive parking right there across from the library. Not that that's going to be that heavy this time. I mean, who knows? But that would just, it's fine. That's fine. If that's the way it is, that's the way it is. Thank you.
But I do want to add, sir, Matt, Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, please.
I really want you to consider, because I know it's not on there, C.T. Martin. We've had such a great turnout every election at C.T. Martin, and I see that we don't have, we have one in Buckhead and one at Northwest Library, and I know they're not that close together, but I do believe that more voters are going to vote at C.T. Martin than at Buckhead. I'm not Buckhead, because I know we have a good turnout there, but then at Northwest Library. And I was just hoping if you would consider moving a box to C.T. Martin, that I think that the voter turnout has been kind of proven to be very good there. And I think for the city elections, it will be good. So I just wanted to just gently suggest that you could reconsider not having a box at C.T. Martin.
Yeah, that is a good suggestion, actually. Because I will double check if we are permitted to place one there. I know before I believe we had to put them in county buildings. I'll double check if we're able to put one there, because it was different. Now that it's not permanently installed outside of the building. Gotcha. And that would be a different thing if we had to drill into C.T. Martin's concrete to install a box and put a camera up. That was why we didn't put one there last time. But now that those things are not required due to SB 202, we'll look into relocating that box.
Thank you. I appreciate your consideration there. Thank you.
Other thoughts or comments on this? Yeah, Dr. Ruth.
Just a question, Nadine. What's the distance between each of the boxes? You did the GIS mapping.
We did it by population. I do not have the mileage, but I can provide that information to you.
Okay, just thinking about that based on Vernetta's question. Comment.
I mean, you asked the distance between which two boxes or all of them?
Just all of them, just the distance. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll get that information. I'll email that to you and to the board.
Any other questions? So in terms of action on this, Mr. Barron, you need approval on this today. Is that correct for the timeline that you need to meet on all this? You're on mute.
Yes, we needed approval on 8 of them. Nadine, the recommended ones are the ones without the dots in them. Is that correct?
Correct. We're looking at are we talking about the advanced voting or just the drop boxes?
We're talking about the drop boxes. To approve the drop boxes, they need to select 8 of these on there.
Correct. Yes, that's correct.
And the recommended ones are the ones with the solid circles. Is that right?
If you're looking at the map of all the advanced photo locations, it's the ones with the green. Is that what you're looking at?
Maybe let's just read them off. I mean, so.
Oh, okay. On that map, I was looking at the other map. Okay, so yeah, read them off, Nadine.
Okay, so we're recommending Milton Library, East Roswell Library, Sandy Springs Library, Buckhead. We will reconsider Northwest Scotts to C.T. Martin. Or if you want to switch from C.T. Martin and Adams Park, but right now it's Buckhead, Northwest Library, Adams Park Library, Wolf Creek Library, and New Beginnings Senior Center.
So what I would say is, I wonder if what we should do is the motion should be that it doesn't seem like there's an objection to it, and we'll take a vote on it, obviously, but that it's the seven And then the one is that we want to do CT Martin, if possible, but if not, then it's Northwest Library. So at least this way you have authorization to move forward with CT Martin, but if it's not legally permissible, doesn't meet the requirements, then you've got the second backup location. Would that work for y'all?
Yes,
Yeah,
that'll
one-
work, Mr.
And
Chair.
Nadine,
Yeah,
Nadine,
I hear Mr.
hold on.
Johnson. Yep.
I was just saying, I agree with Ms. Nuridan on CT Martin. If we can use it, I thought we couldn't, but if we can, I'd love to have it. But also, I would keep Adams Park only because that one services the College Park, Hateville, East Point, all of that area. And if we were to move Adams Park, then nothing will be in that general vicinity. So that was the only point I tried to make. Northwest as a backup for CT Martin, yes.
So if someone could put that motion forward for
So
me. Moved by Mr. Johnson. If I can get a second.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Nuridan. So now that motion is in front of us. Any other discussion on this? And again, it's all of them that were presented with the exception, as presented, with the exception of Northwest Library. We're now saying that CT Martin is our preference, Northwest only if that is not permissible. Any further questions? Yes, Madam Vice Chair, please go ahead.
For District 1, Nadine, Fulton County Commission District 1, which one of, oh, I'm sorry, my map went away. Which one of the drop boxes are in Commission District 1?
Isn't it Milton?
No, it's East Roswell Library.
East Roswell. Okay, 1, 2.
Okay, thank you.
And can we just make a point as for people who may be watching, that even though these are where the drop boxes are, the other locations that are on there are also places that ballots could be quote unquote dropped off. So at the various annexes and the government center.
Thank you for that clarification. Exactly. So North Annex, Government Center, downtown, and South Annex. Mr. Wingate, I see your hand.
Yes, I'd like to make a friendly suggestion that consideration be given that the Dropbox be redesigned from the Milton Library to the Alpharetta Library.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
I think, I've lived up here 30 years. I'm kind of familiar with the area, and the access and to all of that is clearly much better at the Alpharetta Library. Unless one of the officials up there has told Nadine or whomever that they don't want it there. I don't know that, but we can have that discussion as well if need be.
I am double checking. The only issue with that is I believe it will remove a box from District 2. I believe Alpharetta also lies in District 1.
Yeah, I believe that's correct. Yes.
But if we want to make that change,
I see.
Yeah, that's the reason. That's also the reason, because Alfred, it looks like it's in a 2, but it's not. It's in a 1.
It's in 1. Let me, to that point, did you all consult with the BOC on this?
No.
No. We've always got, their opinions.
We did consult with this.
Though, right? This will, after we do it, it goes to them.
No.
Yes.
We're voting to approve.
No, we don't have to get the BOC approved on these. This is a BRE function.
Okay.
Just for, please just give that consideration.
Well, Mr. Wingate, I believe this is the forum in which to give the consideration. I think if we get to, I don't know if staff wants to, what their position is, that they're okay with that, but
it's fair enough.
Mark, are you saying it might be better to move East Roswell to Alpharetta, or is Alpharetta in 1 or 2?
Well, I don't know. I think Burnett, it's a good question. I think that if you do a Milton library and an Alpharetta library, that's going to then give 2 with fairly, low distance proximity. I think if you look at Milton down to East Roswell, that's probably 20 miles or so.
Well, Alpharetta is in two.
Now, and again, I hear, and I think it makes perfect sense that, you're trying to also provide the district, coverage. And yes, Milton is in two. Alpharetta is one.
Milton is in one.
Well, I'm talking,
Alpharetta is in two.
Yeah, there would, if you put it in Alpharetta, I believe then you're going to have two in District 1.
Is that correct, Ms. Williams?
Is Alpharetta in District 1 or 2, Nadine?
She just stated that.
Yeah, Alpharetta is in District 2, and so is East Roswell.
Yeah.
So you'll have nothing. Well, it's on the borderline, so we can reach out to the commissioners to see if they're okay with that.
That's why I
because
asked
geographically, it is in a better location. But we're trying to make sure they're equally distributed to the commissioner districts, but we can reach out to them, and if they allow the change, if they are okay with the change, we can make that change. If Rick is okay with us.
Yeah. Well, Rick just said that it's up to us right now, so we actually don't. But I apologize. Mr. Wingate was talking when you first started. Was that Alpharetta's in District 2?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I was just clarity. I was just saying for clarity that Alpharetta Library is in Commission District 2. And she said that it is in District 2.
I thought Alpharetta was in District 1. Because I believe Liz Hausman represents that area.
Excuse me, for clarity, Alpharetta is in District 1, Milton is in District 2.
Milton is 2, Alpharetta 1.
And what about East Roswell?
1.
Okay.
So the issue is having 2 Dropboxes in District 1.
Correct.
And having 1 Dropbox in District 2.
No, it'd be 0.
It would be none in District 2 if you moved it.
And the point to that is that there is such close proximity between the Milton Library and the Alpharetta Library. So, I understand clearly that, this has been put in front of us to vote upon. And I guess we have to do that now because we got to get on with this. But I think I heard someone say that we can approve this, but there could be then an amendment that comes back where we move from the Milton Library to the Alpharetta Library after the fact of this. Is that correct?
Well, what I was going to suggest is we do it much like we did the CT Martin one. Let's do a contingency one that we approve Alpharetta unless the District 1 commissioner has strong objections, at which point we move it back to Milton Library.
Yeah, I guess, Mr. Chair, that what this would come down to is if we did move it to the Alpharetta Library from Milton, then we put 2 in District 1, which is Liz Hausman, and we take Milton away from Bob Ellis.
Sorry, I was proposing that the contingency be the consultation with the commissioners to see if there is an objection of that being close enough to his district that he doesn't mind. But if he does have strong objections, that we return it back over to the Milton Library.
Can I say something?
Now he doesn't have to come back to us. That's, I guess, we know kind of option 1, but then the default is option 2.
How else, you best. I just think I think the Alpharetta Library is certainly a better solution.
Mr. Wingate, team, I'm looking at the map, and Alpharetta Library is on the borderline. So what I'm going to do is check with GIS just to clarify the 1 and 2. Before y'all take a vote. Is that fine? Is that fair?
Yeah. I think that, again, having lived up for all these years, the people in Alpharetta, which is, certainly, got the population and the density is, clearly going to and does spend an awful lot of time in that downtown Alpharetta area where the library is. That people from Alpharetta would go to Milton to that library is not so much.
And board, just
nice place, but it's just the proximity to it.
And just remember, this is a municipal election. So even though we're looking at districts, the commission district, county commission district This is actually a municipal election. So if there are more voters in Alpharetta, there might be a better move to move it there.
I think that's the point, Chief. Yeah. But again, I guess you just, probably you got to, I don't know whether you've consulted with commissioners because, obviously that's always an issue. But and making a determination exactly, which districts these are in. Alpharetta being one or two, I just thought this, I just have known that that Alpharetta, I thought for all parts of the city limits of Alpharetta, that was in fact District 1, but I could be wrong.
So we have three options here. One is to put a pin in this one until Ms. Benjamin gets back to us with the confirmation from GIS. Second path is that we just make a decision of what we think it should be. And if we want to move Milton to Alpharetta, that's one path. And the final one is to do it contingent on consultation with the commissioners. So I don't know what the will is at this point. If we want to, it looked like Mr. Johnson was signaling that let's wait, so let's get a confirmation from GIS and then come back to this. We do have one more agenda item that we can move on to and then circle back to this one.
Yeah, I'm okay with following Mr. Wingate and Ms. Dr. Ruth live in the area. They know more about it. I'm fine either way.
Yeah. Dr. Ruth or Mr. Wingate,
Yeah, I would just go ahead and move,
okay.
Just have two in that district. So that would be Alpharetta and East Roswell.
Okay.
And if we get feedback from the commissioners, we can definitely change that, but at least we can have it in motion.
Okay. All right. So the original motion was from Mr. Johnson, I believe. If you will accept that as an amendment to your motion to incorporate that move. So again, repeating that we're no longer using Milton Library, instead using Alpharetta Library instead. And then the rest still follows from your original motion. I can't remember who seconded his motion. Was that Ms. Nuridan? Ms. Nuridan, do you accept that change as well? Okay.
Yes.
That is the motion before us. If there is no further discussion on this, let's take.
Yeah, you know what? I've been, while you are talking, it's been wonderful. Looking at it, matter of fact, the Alpharetta City Library is in District 2. Accordingly, the dividing line seems to be 400. And given the fact that the Alpharetta Library is west 400, then that looking at it looks like it put us in D2, not D1. So check that out.
Okay. Well, the motion is on the table. Is there any other discussion?
I agree.
With Alpharetta City Library. All right. If there's no other discussion, let's go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. So great. Thank you for that feedback, and staff. We will wait to hear from you regarding the CT Martin qualifier on that. All right. If there's nothing else on this, let's go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is voter education and outreach plan. Mr. Eskridge, I believe you're the one taking us through this. And colleagues, this was in the information sent out by Ms. Bodison this week.
So good afternoon, everyone. Let me first say it's a pleasure to put a face to each of the voices. It was a pleasure speaking with you. So to keep it somewhat brief, and of course I'm gonna leave room for questions, but the good thing is we already have a pretty much well-established voter education outreach program. So this plan kind of was intended to build off of that and just kind of streamline and make it more strategic in how we operate and carry that out. So in it, your examples are, of course, they're not exhaustive because it will grow as we receive more input from, of course, board members and certain community leaders and staffing of that nature. But in, excuse me, within it is built an opportunity for us to conduct certain analysis, which will yield us better information as far as how we conduct outreach to target areas that we should be conducting outreach, And then within those analyses will yield us opportunities to identify resources. It will, of course, give us opportunities to expand on our objectives and goals within the plan that is before you, are kind of goals and objectives, again, that we kind of derive from what we already have in place, but some new existing ideas to head in the direction that we want to go. And then from those objectives will be the outreach itself, which will be the primary means of how we intend to go about achieving those goals and objectives, excuse me. So that's where you start to see the actual, I guess, formulation and programming of those different goals and objectives. And then, of course, as we roll those out, for instance, the academy, within that, we'll have opportunity to see what works, what doesn't, and then go back to the drawing board to, say, throw that out or add this. And then I also wanted to put within the plan an opportunity to measure, so we can, upon evaluation, go back and say, hey, we have these kind of tangibles that we can show proof that we are being effective or we're not being effective, which will, again, cause us to be more strategic in how we carry out the program. So hopefully everyone had a chance to go over it. So I will entertain any questions or comments or concerns.
All right, questions or comments from my colleagues on this document? Mr. Wingate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's not really so much of a question, Mr. Eskridge. I'd like for you to think about or consider that the Fulton County Republican Party, and I would assume probably the Fulton County Democrat Party, we would like to, or I'd like to assign an individual as a liaison into your group.
Okay, you mean the actual staff or team?
Yeah, as I read through that, I mean, you're going to have, fundamentals, you're going to have staffing and people that are involved in this, in the practice and getting these things done. I would just like to, again, I'm just proposing that, a consideration be given that we can have a Fulton County Republican Party liaison.
Okay.
That ideally to me would be someone that you could communicate with, could communicate with you, so that there is some drawing of that program. I think obviously without the political party's involvement, I understand and all the nonpartisan verbiage and everything else that's in there, but to the reality of it, just having liaisons, one person, it doesn't have to be more than that. Just somebody you could keep in a loop, and then that person from the Democrat side and the Republican side has as direct resource to any activities they may want to conduct.
Okay.
Along, obviously with your support and approval.
Absolutely, yes, sir. So I in response, just off the top of my head, I don't know what that looks like, but I will, of course, contact you and speak more of it. So next time we convene, I'll have a little bit more of hopefully something that leads in that direction.
Yes, sir. Like I said, just for consideration.
Okay.
All right. I see Mr. Johnson and Ms. Norton have unmuted themselves. I don't know if both of y'all has questions. So Mr. Johnson.
Go ahead, Mr. Johnson.
Just say, aren't we those people? We're submitted by the Fulton County Democratic Party and the Fulton County Republican Party. So we would be the people. We're working with Mr. Eskridge right now on developing this plan and all of. So wouldn't we be that liaison or those liaisons? They would actually have two for each party to be able to work with the department to do that. Exactly.
No, and Ms. Johnson, no, I'm not saying that, that the board and that representation, certainly does not have input to this. I obviously don't speak for you, but I don't want to have to be then that conduit as well for these particular activities. That's just me.
Mhm.
I got other things to do. I'm just saying from our party, you know, we could establish a person that can be that outreach, you know, voter registration outreach component. And there would be some clear focus. That may not sit right, you know, or with, you know, you and the Democrat. I can't speak to that, obviously. I'm just speaking from our side that just a consideration.
Okay. My
I'm
only
not,
concern,
and I'm not making a motion that get done and voted on here. You know, I think you probably
it's a
heard that.
discussion. I understand.
But, just consideration, and if it needs to be discussed the next meeting or the next, fine.
I just want to put on the table that we would need to be very mindful of that, in the sense that our responsibilities is to be as bipartisan as possible. When we start involving other people, we can become, especially in this hyper partisan on both sides atmosphere that we live in, it can evolve into something more than it was intended to be. So I just want to keep that out there as well.
Well, I'd be interested in not for this particular conversation, I'd be interested in your thoughts about, you know, what that means.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
Because I don't understand that. I'm not trying to offer this as a consideration to where, you know, we can put some attack animal, you know, against all of this. I think it is more in the spirit, at least in my mind, it's more in the spirit of cooperation, you know, that we have inclusion from that. And the parties, you know, yeah, we're appointed as representatives, but crying out loud, I don't know about, I can't speak, obviously won't for Kathleen, Dr. Ruth, but, you know, we don't, you know, there's a lot of other things going on. And this, all of this stuff we're doing right now takes up an awful lot of time. So just to consider, and if if the board says no, the board says no. It's how this works. And I'm getting it on because, you know, I have that ability to speak for consideration. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Ms. Norden, you have the floor.
I'm so excited about this Elections Academy, Mr. Eskridge. And I mean, you know, even with the concerns presented by the other board members, I think it's timely and necessary. So I'm not sure if you guys are talking about the Elections Academy, but I think it's a great thing that Fulton County needs, and I'm excited to see how it develops.
Right. Other thoughts, comments, feedback for Mr. Eskridge on this? I do have a question. So was there a time, are y'all building out a timeline to accompany this, the plan, just so that we see kind of what it looks like over the next 6 months, 5.5 months now at this point?
Yes, sir. I mean, it's continuously, one of the first things I did and certainly beginning to get it drafted was make sure that we were getting back on track with our achievement items.
Yeah.
So we were able to actually get those updated to be in real time. So as of right now, I wanted it to get it presented to you, to you all first, and then of course we'll create out as far as from this point to implementation. It will follow with certain milestones and timelines that we need to have rolled out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I see I mean, I think the content you presented today is great. I mean, I think it covers everything. And I'm just mindful of the clock ticking against us in terms of between now and November. With a lot of the changes, the sooner we get out there, the better, because you know, what we don't want is the fact that, we find ourselves in October and we're trying to, you know, inform the public about the changes.
Oh.
And I'm not suggesting that I'm sure you're going to work faster than that, but it'd be helpful for us to kind of have something we can all be marching towards with all these other ideas and suggestions we have.
Yes, sir. So let me just expound on that. So with our current staff, we're beginning to identify, of course, we're still in the midst of a pandemic, but we want to start working towards identifying different opportunities that we can attend now to kind of get our outreach back on track. So that is where we are. a lot of the COVID outreach that is going on. We're researching, being able to kind of attach ourselves with that just to get something back in motion and the wheel rolling.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments on this topic, this agenda item? All right. Well, thank you and welcome. We look forward to working with you and seeing great things come from you over the next month and year.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, colleagues, if there is nothing else, the last item on our agenda is executive session. We do have both personnel matters as well as litigation to discuss, hence the reason for the executive session. Mr. Barron, we're going to ask you to be in for the first part of that executive session when we talk about the personnel matter, and then we'll have you dismiss yourself, and then when we pick up the others. So with that, now that I've expressed why we're going into executive session, I'll entertain a motion to do that. Is there a motion from Mr. Johnson? Is there a second? Second from Mr. Wingate. I see your hand. That motion is now on the floor. Or did you have a question, or was that?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Mr. Wingate.
Can I request that we take a few minutes in between, before we just jump over to this other, if you don't mind? I need to get up for just a little bit, and I apologize to, all of my fellow board members. I'm trying to my best. But can we have just a few minutes before we click over to the executive session, please?
I agree, Mark. Thanks for that.
By the smiles on everybody's faces, it looks like we're all in agreement.
I apologize. I hate being the old guy, but I am. So.
Okay. So yeah, we'll take let's go ahead and vote on that motion to move into executive session. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Very good. It is now 12:15. So let's say no later than 12:20. We'll be all on the executive session call. And then we'll
okay, 12, so about 5 minutes or so. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Mr. Wingate, I see you. Did Dr. Ruth, was she be able to get back as well?
Hopefully so.
Tell you what, let's,
I think she.
if you can go ahead and put a motion on the table to adjourn regular, return to regular session and then adjourn, just do it in one motion.
Sure. Yes, I make a motion that we return to our regular meeting.
And go ahead and do it. Let's add the adjourn in there. So if
Oh, and with that to adjourn the regular session. Thank you. Sorry.
if Dr. Ruth is able to pop in. All right, Ms. Ringer, here, I don't know what to do in this land if we just by default can adjourn.
I think by default, you don't have a quorum to continue.
Yeah. Okay. I just didn't want us to go in like indefinite suspension. We're ready to go convene until July. Okay, with that, since we don't have quorum, we did adjourn out of executive session, but we will go ahead and consider this meeting adjourned as well. So thank you, everybody, for participating, and we'll see everybody in person at our July meeting.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
All right.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Have a great day.